Now?
Okay.
Okay, well, I speak with my hands, Rocio, you know that.
I know that, me too, so we don't know what we don't do. Oh, I don't know what I'm going to do because we speak with the body, with the hands.
We'll try. Okay, wonderful to be here with you. We've known each other for a long time. We met when one summer I was doing a program in Mexico. Oh, no, yeah, that's when we first met. But I met her through another colleague before I met her in person. And that was in Houston when I was doing a summer program. And one of the participants brought about 20 people from Mexico to come.
Yeah, more or less.
And then at the end, everybody wanted to go to Mexico. Why don't you do this in Mexico? And one of my colleagues there said, oh, I know someone who's the manager of a hotel in Playa del Carmen, this charming, sleepy little town it used to be at that time.
Yeah.
And so she immediately contacted Rocio, and off we go the next summer to Playa del Carmen, and we go to this small, quaint hotel, and we find out we're going to be doing everything under a palapa, the thatched roof made from palm leaves, outside, and then pulls up this big truck, and they start unloading all of these chairs, and the hotel had to buy chairs for the participants to sit in outside under the palapa. So at least we were going to be in the shade. And this is, the rest is history, as they say.
But long time ago.
Long time ago, yeah.
Very long time, maybe 28 or
20-something years, 20-something years ago.
Yeah, something like that. And from that's what, and I knew you in maybe 5 years before that, because I was just reading your book at that moment, and articles, and know a little bit about the collaborative and dialogical practices. And the first thing that I said, well, she's kind of crazy, because it seems that she doesn't do anything, but she does a lot. And I always say to you that she always surprised me, and today I don't think it's going to be another thing. She's going to surprise me. We had been planning this for many months and talking together and by Zoom or phone or whatever, and we have seen each other to prepare this. And what happened? She always surprised me. I don't know, because we were not thinking to do this at the beginning, and we are doing it as we do the conversations.
Right. When she says prepare, we talked about, what are we going to do? What do you think they want us to do?
And it has to do with Pavel.
Yes.
We want to thank
This all started
Pavel.
with Pavel.
Yeah. We were looking to you. Yeah. Where are you? Yeah. And he decided, he invited us, and it was obviously a pleasure and an honor for me to be here with all of you and with you, Harlene.
Okay, so this is the second time I've been to Bosnia. The first time was in the 90s, right at the end of the war, when I was invited to come by someone who was associated with an NGO based in London that responded to medical disasters. And he told me that I would be going to a social service agency and that they were having some staff challenges. I had no idea, because that's all I knew before I came. But this was the days when you still had to be met in the white vans, and the passengers didn't have bulletproof vests, but the driver did. And we went to this agency. He dropped us off, and I started meeting people, and it ended up that it was an agency where the staff was mostly women, probably about 30-something women, and they were working with women. They were providing services to women. And the challenge was that they were working with women who they had experienced the same dilemmas of the war, the same losses of human life and property and possessions and just everyday life as the people they were supposed to help. And they were just feeling very, very hopeless and helpless. And I thought with my optimism, oh, well, let's see, maybe we can talk a little bit about hope. Well, that went over like, as they say, a lead balloon that doesn't float. It just goes down plop to the ground. No, they did not want to talk about hope at all. And so I thought, okay, switch gears. Hopelessness. And boy, did they get excited about talking about hopelessness. I've told you this story before, yeah. And to make a long story short, they started talking in these small groups, and they didn't want to come back. But when they did come back, they had all of these things to tell us. They had created poems, they had created artwork, they had planned a trip to the beach. That's what happened. They started talking with each other and talking about how hopeless they were and the challenges of their work, and they decided they needed to do something for themselves and that they could share their experiences through poetry. And they did. And it's hard to share how touched I was by this experience, but it was a profound experience.
And I was just thinking what you were doing it with this group, and it's like what we do when we start working with a community, with a client, with a consultant, that we just start the conversation. Mm-hmm. And then what happened, we don't know.
Yeah, you don't know.
You never know. And that's what happened to you, that you were thinking about hope, and they would start talking about hopeness. And then what happened is the poetry, being together, and all of those things. And that's what we do, because we don't know what is going to happen. And the expert is the community, is the client, is the consultant, not us. We are just facilitating a space for dialogue.
And so you're reminding me now that it's important for me to say that my work, although it's informed a lot by postmodern philosophies and some of the assumptions from that, has really been profoundly influenced by clients, the people I worked with, the learners I've worked with, and that's why I came up with the idea of they are the experts. I know nothing. They know it all. They know more. I can never know another person's life like they know it, no matter how long I've known them or how well I think I know them.
And that brings me to curiosity.
Okay.
Because if you are not curious about what is happening to the other and what do the other wants to tell us about themselves, so we just start thinking and we create stories about them, but we really don't know what is happening and what do they want to talk about us, what do they want to share with us. Mm-hmm. So I think curiosity and being very tentative, and that's part of the philosophical stance, being very tentative and curious, help us to join in a conversation, in a mutual conversation and transformation at the same time.
And so the last time that I saw Rocio was in the office that she has at her home. And I walked in, and first thing that I noticed was this pig, this ceramic pig, a pig made out of clay, a big pig. And
you can see it.
Oh, you can see it. Okay. Because I said, Rocio, we have to have a picture of this pig. She says, what are we going to do with a picture of the pig? I said, well, one of the things that I think about when I come to your space is I always notice what you have. She is a collector of all kinds of Mexican crafts and arts, and this was a new piece, this pig. Well, she happens to know the artist, and she fell in love with his work, and he gave her, or she probably purchased, this pig.
No, he was a present for me.
Yeah, a present, yeah.
And it was like he began talking that when he went outside, because we were talking about artists and art, he paints. paints and do a lot of things. And he said, well, after your comment in therapy, I just began doing this pig. And I just put first a color. Then I said, well, that color makes me think on that, but what if I just put another one? So he started putting many colors, and that brings me to the conversation that we had been having about, okay, multiple voices, as much voices that we can have, this would happen. A beautiful piece of art as a beautiful conversation or dialogue.
And then you said, what are we going to do with a picture of a pig? Why do you want to show this pig? I said, well, for me, it connects with the notion of noticing, how to be aware of and notice what's right in front of you.
And it has to do also with the uniqueness. The uniqueness of the person of the community with whom we are working. And that allows us with curiosity, with tentative, and the uniqueness that we can just begin creating relationships, because relationships is what creates afterwards community. So that's what I was just thinking when you were saying about the pig.
And that's a connection with Pavel. Because when I first met Pavel and he was beginning to tell me about his dissertation research on addictions, the importance of the social community of the person who was addicted and the community in which he or she became addicted. And there's something about those kinds of connections that are so important in people's lives that they continue to seek them.
And also you sent Pavel to Cananquil
Yes.
in Mexico.
You have
and
to go to Mexico.
Yeah, and then we create a community, a big community with narrative in Czech Republic, and many of them were at Cananquil in Mexico with us staying. Dita, for example, was, I don't know if Dita is there, but she stays, there you are. She stays 1 year with us. She learned Spanish. And Pavel was with us, Katka, Jakub, Barbora. So, and we created a community. Also, we wrote an article at Six Voices, I remember that. And we do supervision online, you remember that? It's not possible that time. And we did it. And I think that we have all been creating communities all around the world since we create relationships.
Well, you have to say how you did this online consultation, because you were working from Mérida, Mexico, in the very bottom of Mexico. No, I guess that's part of the top of Mexico. Have to turn myself upside down when I think of the map. And they were in the Czech Republic. And 2 different languages. How do you do that? How do you work with people who you think don't speak the same language as you do? Whether it's a literal language in the sense of Czech and English.
Well, it was very interesting because we have people that speak Maya in our group in Mexico, Czech Republic speaking Czech, and we have people that speak Spanish. So we have a lot of languages there. But it was the first time we were going to do that. Do you remember that, Pavel? And we were in a group in Mexico doing therapy, and at the same time, Czech Republic was doing the reflecting team. And then to the other side. And we have a lot of languages all around there. And the first time we stayed for about 3 hours. And the last one, I think it was an hour and a half. So we learn to do that. And that brings me to that we are always in translation, we are always interpreting, even though we talk the same language. But we are always interpreting.
Always interpreting. and often misinterpreting. That's the key.
Yeah.
Okay, so should we tell them just a little bit about ourselves?
Okay.
Okay. I'm Harlene Anderson. I'm from Houston, Texas. I'm a native Texan. I'm actually a fifth-generation Texan. As I've mentioned to some of you, my father's family immigrated from Sweden, and my mother's family immigrated from Germany. So that's my DNA, or some of it. And I grew up in Houston, which was up until about 4 years ago the most multicultural city in the United States. And at least 35% of the population's first language is Spanish. And you would think that I speak Spanish, but I have been dismissed from Spanish school on the first day because they saw no promise in me. And let's see, I came from a family that I think were very influential in terms of who I have turned out to be. Very caring, supportive parents. One of the things that I like to say, particularly when I'm in an Asian country, is that they never ask me, do you have homework, or did you do your homework? Or what kind of grades are you going to come home with this time? Just because I always loved school and I did it. No one had to say, do this or do that. I did it.
Well, Harlene, you always do what you have to do, and more than that.
That can turn into a challenge.
Do you want to say something more about you?
Oh, I could say a lot more, but I'll stop here.
Okay.
I'll pause here.
Okay, so I am Rocio Chaveste from Mexico. I live in Mérida, that it's the capital of the Mayan culture, or one of the capitals of the Mayan culture in Mexico. And I used to have an institute with 3 master programs in collaborative dialogical practices, and has been a lot of time doing these things, maybe 27 years ago. And now I'm working more in community and in an international community. So it has been very interesting because we had continued working, even though I used not to like to work in Zoom, but now most of my time, not in private practice, but in doing work, I do it by Zoom with my colleagues in MLP program from all around the world, working with base care children to work with them and families and governments and institutions. So that's what I am doing right now.
And you're being very modest because you were very heavily involved in politics, and you had a very important position, something like the Secretary of Health.
No, it's of social development.
Of social development, okay.
And that's why I've been working in community since a long time ago. And I don't know if Martin is here. Martin? I don't know. But that he was saying yesterday that how can we deal with these vertical institutions, and if we just stop doing it, or we continue in several ways doing it, our work. And I would like to ask you, Harlene, what to do with dialogue, or to continue a conversation with someone that maybe they don't like the way that they don't want to talk, or they just want to give an idea that it's straight what you have to do. They order you what to do. And how can we just continue open dialogue, a conversation? What are your ideas about that?
I think it's happening in this conference, and this reminds me that we were invited to reflect on this conference. And we haven't done that. So it's been an absolute pleasure an inspiring, pleasurable experience to be here
Yeah.
and to learn about so many different ways in which people are working and making the ideas that are associated with open dialogue come alive in your own particular context.
Yeah, so I was thinking in how to continue, and we had already a workshop with monologue and dialogue and many other workshops, and thinking about all the conference and all the workshops that we had been. And I think that one of the questions that we have made, and we were in Christoph's workshop talking about this, how to continue dialogue. And I was just thinking, because we have been living in a world that many countries had been just moving to a place where they don't accept dialogue. We have to obey, or we have to just do what they want. But I think we have to continue. We have to think in hope about this. So I don't know if you have any idea, or should we invite them to think just for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, how to continue about doing this? What do you think?
Well, right now I'm thinking about the word dialogue, and I don't know about you, but I'm often asked, why do you use the word dialogue? It's such a big word. It's such a complex word. I say, well, it's just kind of what my colleagues use. However, I much prefer to talk about talking and being in conversation, which then reminds me that an important aspect of my work is the notion that conversations and relationships go hand in hand. And again, that came from working with clients, where I was working at a medical school, where you had people who came from years and years of experiences with other professionals, not only medical professionals, but people like judges, soccer coaches, teachers, principals, etc. And I would always be curious, okay, so tell me, if you don't mind, about some of those professionals that you met that you wouldn't mind meeting again. And then I would ask, if you don't mind, telling me about some experiences with people that you hope never to have again. And so that was the beginning. And so then I began to write about it as the client is the expert, and the client also meaning the learner, because I've always said that it's important to work with people who are learning or who are curious about what you're doing, because they ask questions and make comments which really push you to think about things that maybe you haven't thought about before. And I think that's the value of coming to a gathering like this conference, is that you hear things that other people are saying and presenting that force you to ask yourself questions perhaps you've never asked before. And maybe they'll ask you some questions you hadn't had posed to you before. But I think what happens in spaces that have been created like the spaces here is that people not only have a chance to talk, to dialogue, but they have a chance to listen. And listening is so important. Not listening in the sense of eye contact and you can repeat verbatim back what someone says or write it in your notes exactly, but that you're listening attentive, that you are listening in a way that you show that you are interested in them, you have respect for what they're saying, and that people then often say, well, how do you know what questions to ask then? I say, well, I don't have to know what questions to ask, because the people I'm talking with tell me what questions to ask. I use a lot of metaphors or analogies in my work, and I talk about it's like reading a really good book, and you can hardly wait to turn the page and see what's coming next, particularly books of intrigue or mysteries, that you just naturally get curious and interested in what's happening and who did what and who's going to do what.
And that brings me to a metaphor that you use a lot. It has to do with a story ball.
Oh,
That it's just amazing, that story ball, because it's a story. It's a ball where you put like papers. They had his.
Yeah, I make a ball, and I have pictures of it. I usually carry with me, but I didn't bring any.
Yeah, and so you move the paper to see what the client really wants to tell you, because you have all the book, but you cannot read it all in that moment. So what part of the book do they want us to know? And it's a metaphor they can, and about what does the client want us to know, and not be trying to, what is he's not telling me, and I have to find out what he's not telling me. No, it's how does the client or the community or the consultant wants us to know from them.
Mm-hmm. I think of it as that people come to us, and they come as the story of their life up until that point. And it's as if it's a book that's been written, and it's been through a paper shredder, and they've picked up all the pieces off the floor and gathered them and squashed them. I use that word, squash. Form them into a ball. Mm-hmm. And if you can imagine a ball out of shreds of paper, there's some pieces sticking out, and you can't see through it. It's not transparent. Mm-hmm. You can't look into it. All you can see is what they are putting in front of you, what they're showing you. And I think of it as they're giving me a very precious gift. And what do? I don't want to take the gift and think in terms of unwrapping it and putting it to the side. But I think I'm going to gaze upon this gift. I'm going to touch it in different ways, metaphorically touch it with my words. And we'll see what happens with this gift.
Yeah, and I want to touch, if you agree, the part of not knowing, okay, as the most political concept. I have been always with this and asking you many times when we were together about this, that I think it's the most important for me concept of the philosophical stance about not knowing as a political concept. And I think that when you think about not knowing, it is not that you are ignorant, not. It is that you know many things about you, but you don't know about the other. And we, in a shared conversation, we learn from the other what the other wants us to learn from them. And that allows us not to be the expert in their lives, but just for creating the space for this conversation. But can you let us know about a little bit more about this concept, please? I think it's very important.
Well, it came from practice. In the days when we used to work in training with teams, clinical teams, of people who wanted to learn to work the way we were working, and we might have a family scheduled, and I would just say, well, there's a family coming in 10 minutes. And maybe two of you would like to pair up and meet with this family. So quickly decide which two of you will meet with this family. Not knowing anything about really who's coming in, that's usually not important to know ahead of time. And I said, okay, so you two are going to meet with the family. I think it's parents and maybe 3 children. So I'm going to say 2 things to you, and that's all I'm going to say of what I want you to do or not do. I say, I want you to go into that room with this family and just talk with them, get to know them, and please let them get to know you. That's all you need to do. You don't need to know what questions to ask, so if you've got questions written on the back of your hand that you think are important to ask, just turn your hand over or wash your hands before you go in the room. You don't need any questions ahead of time. Just listen to them and get to know them like you're meeting someone socially new. And that begins what I think of as chit-chat, just kind of informal talk with people as you get to know them, like you meet somebody new, like you're sitting next to somebody. Well, usually at a conference like this, you sit next to somebody you know, but in case you're sitting next to somebody you don't know, maybe you can think about it. How do you get to know people? You're curious, you ask them things.
Yeah. You always have to be curious and wanted to know more of the other. And that allows us to enter in a conversation that it's like the witness process. Being with the other, learn with the other, talk, learn, listen with the other instead of about the other or for the other.
And I think that's the most important thing to think about our work. It's with, togetherness, being with another person, talking with another person, breathing with another person.
And I think
The
that's,
togetherness.
yeah, the togetherness, the usness of doing things and doing together. And I was saying in maybe in one workshop or whatever, for example, you know that for Mayan people, I don't exist if you don't exist. And we do not exist if they do not exist. So it's a way of doing in a very dialogical way of being, because we do not exist without the other.
It reminds me, thinking back to this conference, that I don't remember if it was in a plenary or in a workshop, somebody mentioned the notion of foreigners. And that's something else that I found very helpful in my work, to always think that I'm a foreigner meeting a foreigner, and that we're foreigners together. I don't know their language, I don't know their territory, I don't know their rituals, I don't know the history of their country. We have to get to know each other and find a way to be with each other, to coexist. And this notion of with, and then the notion of withness, because sometimes I think of withness as maybe another way to talk about what I do, really was influenced first, I think, by Bakhtin, and then by John Schotter, and then the American family therapist Lynn Hoffman. Because Lynn and John began to talk about withness therapy, withness relationships. And I thought, oh, that just makes so much sense to me.
And coming back, that we are very inspired from our clients and from our conversations with them, because we are conversational partners. They know we offer something and they offer us, and we have once again another metaphor: the guest and the host in our lives and in their lives. So we are at the same time, and we have, if we would like to be a very good be received from the others in a wonderful way, we have to do the same thing. And in a conversation and in a community, how do I can receive them in the space that we are creating, and how I want to be received in their own life or in their own space that we are working with. And I think that's another important, and comes back to relationships. And as much voices as you can have, maybe the project would be more sustainable. So I think that this is a way of creating, in some way, community all the time through relationships.
So what Rocio is referring to, the host-guest, that some of you may have heard me speak about before or have read about, that I found it, or I find it still important to think of myself as always a host and a guest simultaneously, and that the people that I'm working with are also host and guest. I'm hosting them in my space. They're hosting me in their space, the metaphorical space of their life that they're sharing with me at those moments we're together. And it's connects with the notion of foreigner. Yeah.
Of what?
Foreigner.
Yeah, and what do we do when we know another person? Instead of, for example, if someone came to, or we go to a community, we're not going to just start a workshop or whatever. I think we have to start with the relationships. Who are you? Who am I? To have a refresh, something to drink or whatever. And because we have to begin with this kind of relations, being close to the other, to know each other, and then we can have all kinds of conversations. And we have a lot of examples of that when you open a conversation of that I care about you, who you are, what would you like to talk about, what are you doing, how are you feeling today, and then the conversation leads you to any other place where they want, and we just follow them. And I just lose from the foreigner. Go ahead, Harlene.
No, that's okay. I was just thinking that a challenge is how to leave behind or put aside temporarily some of the traditions that we have walked into through our education, through our experiences about psychotherapy and what we're supposed to be doing and what we're not supposed to be doing. Just think of some terms, some words like self-disclosure, boundaries. Where did those come from? We just kind of take them on as if they are something that we're supposed to honor and try to emulate.
I think it's just another voice. And how do we invite those voices? And we can say whatever we want to say. I think that the big issue is how do we offer all of those words, all of those all of those discourses, all of those. How do we offer? We are not imposing. We are just offering. Maybe in Czech Republic they say this, but in Bosnia they say that, but in Finland they say that. And what do the client really wants to build with all of these ideas? It is not that Czech Republic is saying the right thing, or Finland or whatever. It is how do we offer it, and how do they build their own idea of what do they want.
And it makes me think of someone recently said, oh, we're beginning to study different cultures. And I thought, and then what are you going to do with what you learn about different cultures? It's some author's idea of what a culture is. And you can have an idea about a culture, but you have to keep in mind that within a broader culture, like the Finnish culture, there are many unique subcultures. Like I told Jaakko the other day, that I remember one time coming to Finland, I guess for the very first time, and Jaakko meets me at the airport, and I walk up to him, and I'm all enthusiastic, and I'm from Texas, so I give him a big hug. And then all of a sudden I think, oh, Harlene, you probably shouldn't have done that. May not be appropriate here. But I did what I do.
And also I was thinking what happened in the MLP program with one of our participants, and she was a facilitator already, of Yemen, that we were talking about the host and guest, and you were saying, okay, if you receive someone, you just ask them if they want some water or tea or whatever, and you ask just for once. And if they say no, that's fine. But then Khadija, that was her name, said, no, in my country, you have to ask many times. But if you don't do that, it is that you're rude, that you are not a good a person that really are inviting some. So we have to learn a little bit more about the cultures and ask them, what is the right thing to do in this moment? No? And I was just thinking about Jaakko and Eric, and we were talking about the difference between even their families or whatever. For example, just Jaakko, if you just run and because you hug him, maybe he wouldn't like it, or maybe he is used to right now after many years. But if I just go with Eric, he would say, "Oh my God, yes, how are you?" And it's not just culture; it's the way that we relate with the people all around us, and that teach us how to be aware of how to relate with the other.
I'm just thinking that you've used the term MLP twice.
And
MLP stands for Mutual Learning Program. Okay, created by Helma, sitting right here. Oh, Anna really created it. Okay, or maybe they created it together as part of the NGO that they work for in the Netherlands. And it stands for Mutual Learning Program. Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's the way.
And it's really, really interesting because they've gathered people and have been working with people from all around the world. So if you do a video, some kind of electronic exchange with them, you may have half the people from African countries, you may have people from Israel, there have been people from Romania, from the Middle East. Yeah,
and
just
Sudan,
all over
South
the
Africa.
world. It's just amazing. And they're all interested in the ideas that you're talking about here at this conference. Getting back to the conference.
No, what I was just thinking is that what they said, and it's interesting, it has to do with this conference, is that the people from MLP program, Mutual Learning Program, that are from all around the world, they say that how can we create a community with all different languages? We had a lot of translation or whatever, but that they had start to work together, different organizations, because of the conversations that we had in the process of doing the workshops, or it's not workshops. We have conversations about what they are doing in their community, and every one of us talks about our experience, and we learn from each other every day that we have this. So I think that is the same thing that had happened here in the conference. Don't you think so?
I think so. And it reminds me that really, I think the most important thing happening in this room at this time is not what we're saying or doing, but what you're doing in your own head, what ideas are rolling around. Oh, not what I expected, I'm bored. Oh, I hadn't thought about it this way.